So a grade 10 pupil has shot and killed a fellow learner before turning the gun on himself. The exact circumstances around the incident are still unclear, but it's understood this took place on the first day of school in Daveyton. That's after an altercation between the pair. So it's reported the 16-year-old shot the other in the head before taking his own life outside the school premises. To talk to us about how we can educate children about guns, we're joined by Adele Kirsten. She's the Director of Lobbying and Advocacy at Gun-Free South Africa. Adele, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Does it appear to you that South Africa has a gun problem?
We definitely have a gun problem. There are too many guns in circulation in our society. They're too easy to get hold of. And as this terrible, terrible tragedy reminds us, is that the use of a gun or the presence of a gun in any fight fundamentally alters the outcome of that fight. And in an instant, really in the pull of a trigger, the lives of two families have been altered forever, and an entire school community has been altered.
You talk about how easy it is to access guns. I just wonder what weapons are used in crimes in South Africa.
So the latest crime statistics show that almost just over a third of murders a gun is used. But in over 80% of crimes like business robberies and other crimes, a gun is the preferred weapon of choice for criminals.
In this instance of these pupils, as we speculate in terms of what happened, you talk about the ease of access in terms of getting guns. I spoke to somebody this morning about this issue, and they said, give me 3,000 rands and give me an hour, I will go and get you a gun. And that's how easy it is to get in South Africa. So how many firearms are in circulation, and of those, how many do we know that are licensed and how many do we know that are not licensed?
So there are just over 3.5 million licensed guns in the country. That includes your private security and then citizens, individuals. What's really important is that it's hard to track how many illegal weapons there are. It's because once a gun leaves the legal market, you can't track it, you can't measure it, which is why having a sort of central record-keeping and an efficient working record-keeping system is critical. Because if there's been, for example, loss or theft from a licensed owner, you're required to report, and that then helps the state record how are guns moving out of the legal system. But we know, Duduzile, that fraud and corruption are an important part of pushing weapons from the legal into the illegal market. So things like the 16-year-old, maybe he got it from his home. But the story you've told is common. The communities we work in, whether it's Alexandra or Atlantis, Ivory Park, Kensington, young people will repeat this story that you've just said over and over again. Give me an hour and I will be able to find a gun. And that's where, one has to turn off that tap.
And that's just it. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. And we've heard that being said time and again. So what seems to be the disconnection, seeing that we still see the proliferation of guns, be it illegal or legal? And with the legal route, people will argue that I have the right to protect myself. But that we're seeing illegal guns in the hands of young people. What is it about our messaging that is not getting through?
A really complex set of messages, and I think to say there are really two key components to this, which we call demand and supply. So there's a demand for guns, whether it's as part of your criminal work, but also for many young people. So these two young men, unfortunately, it's not uncommon. 89% of people who are shot and killed in South Africa are young men, often living in kind of metro urban areas. But young men are interested in guns, they're fascinated by them, For many of them, it's about self-protection. For others, it's about their male identity. For others, it's about power and knowing that they can actually hurt someone. So a lot of work has to be done, and Gun Free South Africa does this with our youth team in communities affected by gun violence, of raising awareness of the risks. So at 16, you're immature, you don't understand the impact and consequences of what it means to have a gun. So for many of our young people, they, through the Firearms Control Amendment Bill, are lobbying government to increase the age for legal gun ownership to 26. So changing the law, advocating for stronger gun laws is a really important part of our work with young people, making it more difficult to get a gun. So we have to reduce gun availability. And that means stopping it from the source, but also once the gun has left the legal market, the key task of SAPS is to mop up those illegal guns. But raising awareness of the risks of having a gun, being in a home where there's a gun, this message really needs to be emphasized.
When we look at the sources of South Africa ending up with so many guns, there are some serious machines in circulation in this country. How big a problem is the cross-border trade?
The cross-border trade is a problem, but often now moving from our country into neighboring countries. The two biggest sources of illegal guns is fraud and corruption, and then loss and theft from legal gun owners. So there's something like about 24 guns that are lost or stolen every single day in this country from civilians. And then, of course, you have your police officers who are also involved in lending a gun, or you've got people in your central firearms register who are fraudulently issuing licenses to people who shouldn't have a gun. So really it's fraud and corruption and then loss and theft. Those are the two biggest sources of illegal guns in South Africa.
You paint a scary picture. Just finally, you mentioned the Firearms Amendment Bill. It is not that South Africa has a legislation problem. I wonder whether it is an enforcement problem, or maybe you could talk us through some of the amendments that we have seen over the years, and one that particularly stands out for you.
So I think a key theme of the current amendment, but certainly it's been a central principle of South Africa's new gun law post-94, is to reduce availability. And that means reducing the type of gun anyone can own, the number of guns anyone can own, the amount of ammunition. So it's about restricting, and then also restricting who can own. So these are key global principles that have been shown to reduce gun availability. And we know less guns means less dead people. And so we're hoping that when the bill comes to Parliament, hopefully this year again, that there will be further opportunity to ensure that that principle is carried across this amendment.
Is it unimaginable to have gun education at schools, perhaps in high school, so teaching children about the power of a gun? If you've held one and you've fired a shot, you feel just how powerful it is. It can even almost take you back. Is it unimaginable to maybe teach our children the importance of respecting, this weapon?
I think it would be a key part of sort of, life orientation, about exposing children to the dangers, but not about trying to gun-proof them. You can't gun-proof children. So there's research that's shown this idea that, if you see a gun, leave the room, call an adult. Children are curious. They often can't tell the difference between a replica gun and a real gun. You cannot gun-proof children. So often parents will say, well, my gun's in a gun safe. I've got the key on me. Most people don't keep the key on them. They hide it somewhere. Kids will find it. So basically the awareness raising has to be about understanding the risks of gun violence and that guns are lethal. They're much more lethal than any other weapon. And to bring us back to these two 16-year-olds, there's that moment of pulling the trigger you kill someone, and then the remorse and you kill yourself. This is preventable. This should not be happening in South Africa, and we can prevent it. And the best way to prevent it is to make sure that guns are not readily available in our society.
Adele Kirsten is the Director of Lobbying and Advocacy at Gun Free South Africa. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon.